Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique.
And I'm Christina, and we are the Connected in Glass podcast.
Every week, we will feature interviews with glass artists who speak to their creative processes and overcoming challenges.
These conversations are real and raw. We hope that by sharing these stories, you're able to find some connection and know that you're not alone. We just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to our podcast. We're super passionate about this project and work for hours every week to bring you this content. So if you'd like to help support us, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/connectedinglass. Also, please consider joining our Facebook group, Connected in Glass Community, where we continue the conversations from these episodes. We'd love to hear from you. Today, we're interviewing Jason Mcdonald. Jason is from Tacoma, Washington, and has been working in glass since he was 14 years old. He specializes in traditional Venetian glass. Thanks so much for being here with us.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks for inviting me on.
All right. So we just want to start by having you tell us about yourself, where you live, what you enjoy besides glass.
I live in Oakland, California, and that's where I've been for the past 6 years. I'm a student at California College of the Arts, and that's where I spend most of my time. I'm a graduating senior this semester, so in just a few short weeks, I will be on my way to the next phase of life, which happens to be Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. So I'm looking forward to a move in June. When I'm not blowing glass, I'm in the garden with my hands in the dirt, pulling weeds or planting mostly food. I plant a few flowers to make my wife happy. But I'm really interested in the things that I can pull out of the garden and put in my mouth. I guess I think with my stomach a lot. When I'm not in the glass studio or the garden, I'm on the trails. I love to trail run, and I love to hike. Long backpacking trips are something that I really enjoy doing. Being out in nature is it's sort of like being in church. That's where I feel the most centered.
Cool. And so can you tell us how you got into glass, where that journey began for you?
Yeah, I at 14 thought that I had a bright future as a singer. I sang a lot, and I had dreams of stardom. That wasn't to be. So glass wasn't on my radar at all, and I just kind of fell into it accidentally. Like I mentioned earlier, I went to a middle school that had a glass program. This would have been 1998. It was the only program in the world that had hot glass for middle school students. So I was really, really lucky just where I happened to be. And I didn't know about glass or care about art. Was going to be a singer, and I caught a crush on a girl that was getting involved in this glass program at my middle school. And I went in there with her one day, and I really loved it because there was rap music playing on the radio, and people were playing with fire all over the place, and there was smoke in the air. It seemed like a dangerous place to be at. I kind of like that. And I fell in love with it that day. I kept coming back, and I continued on with that program through high school until I graduated.
And you were just like, this is what I'm going to do with my life.
I was really interested in glass blowing, and I did it passionately for the whole time I was in school. But when I finished school, I didn't really continue on with it. In fact, there was a big pause in my early 20s, in my late teens and early 20s, about 7 years where I didn't pick up a blowpipe. I didn't think that there was a future in it. I couldn't see supporting myself on what a glass blower makes. And then in my mid 20s, I was between jobs, and a friend of mine who I bumped into at the supermarket said that this factory was hiring. And I went and I got a job at this glass blowing factory because I had some glass blowing skills. And I met a couple of guys who sort of took me under their wing and showed me what real glass blowing looked like. And I don't want to put a value judgment on what other people do, but these guys were so precise and refined, and they were consummate craftsmen who were on the grind trying to get better, and they taught me what practice looked like. And because of Chris Schulke and Rich Langley, I was able to like decide that with enough practice and skill and dedication, I could get somewhere with this glass game. So it shifted in my mind from this thing that only the super privileged can do, who don't have to worry about money, to this thing that I could do if I just put enough work into it.
So what kind of stuff did you make when you were a kid versus the stuff you made when you started getting more serious as an adult?
I made I made a lot of floppy bowls. It was exciting to get a big bubble on the end of a punty and spin it out. And that was my jam. I made a lot of floppy bowls, and I don't think I'm alone there. I mean, it's dynamic, it's fun, it's a little loose for my aesthetic these days. Let's just say that. When I realized what it took to be a really skilled artist, when I realized that I could learn how to practice, when I got serious about skill building, I started focusing on whatever was hard was interesting to me, and so I started looking at cane and pattern and reticello and especially goblet making, because goblet making is the most difficult and frustrating endeavor that you can put your hands in glass, because someone told me that if you want to get good, you work on the hard stuff, and so I started working on the hard stuff.
And so you made your living for some time working at that factory and then kind of got back into school again. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so I worked at that factory for a few years, and I moved up from the guy that was throwing glass in the furnace to the lead gaffer, and that was a fun process to just, it was really confidence building to see my skill grow from the charger and sweeper up guy to the person who was responsible for finishing the pieces, and I'm proud of that. I think it was an accomplishment to really put my nose to the grindstone and put in the hours. After a few years of doing that, the factory I was working at opened up a new facility in the Bay Area. So this was in Seattle, and so they sent me and a couple of guys down to help train up the crew in Oakland, or I guess it was in Berkeley. And then I did that for a couple of years, and I've been putting in a lot of time and a lot of practice, but I felt like I was spinning my wheels and I wasn't going anywhere. And so I examined what it might look like to go back to school, and I knew that glass was the thing that I was just gonna do glass. So I found myself a glass program, and I applied, and I was really fortunate. I got a scholarship to go to school at California College of the Arts, and without that, I mean, I could have taken out loans, but it would have been just a mountain of debt on my back, especially at this point in my life. So I feel like really, really lucky, and also like I put in the work to get there. So, like a luck with being prepared at the same time. My focus when I started in school was the same that it had been. I wanted to get really, really good and spend all my time in the shop so that I could be great. And there wasn't really an end game aside from being good at it. And as I went through classes at school and I started hearing about this thing called art, which wasn't my focus. I really wanted to be a skills-based crafts person, which I am. I don't want anybody to get the idea that I don't value craft, because I very, very, very much do. But when I realized that you can make a piece of work that just says, "Hey, I'm pretty," or you can make a piece of work that says, "Here, let me tell you a story about something that's important to me." Like, the second one is a little bit more appealing for me to make these days. Like, it's such a good storytelling device. Material is such good storytelling device, and that's been my focus for the past for the past 3 years. That's been my focus.
That's so cool. Thanks for explaining the difference between, working in a factory and trying to be precise and perfect, and then going to art school and having to like push the envelope in a different way or express yourself and find a voice. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm stubborn as hell, and I really resisted it because I thought I knew what I wanted, and it finally sunk in that that there was more.
So we were looking at your website before we started this call, and
It's
we
the
were
best.
looking we were looking at your work, and it is very moving. Can you kind of describe your work for people who haven't seen it and kind of delve into that a little bit more?
I make several different types of work, and I really enjoy mixing materials. I work in glass and stone and ceramic and bronze, really whatever I can get my hands on. Glass blowing is my focus, but I love mixing it up. Um, My work centers around themes of race and equity and equality. When I decided that I wanted to make objects that conveyed powerful stories, I got looking at things in my life that were meaningful to me, and I decided that there's a lot of work that needs to be done still in the area of inclusion and inclusivity, specifically in the glass world, but generally everywhere. There's this notion that still exists in the minds of many folks that the race problem has been solved, that we had a Black president, and I say, so what? Hooray for history. We still got some real problems to deal with. So my work talks about issues like the over policing of Black and brown bodies, or the lack of representation in outdoor activities like backpacking, or my feelings of alienation in the hot shop, just walking to a space where I don't see myself or my values reflected.
And obviously, these are really strong, hard feelings that you feel. How do you get them out into the material? Like, just to start, do you draw it out, or do you write it out, or do you play with the glass until you can kind of represent what you're feeling?
Mm. I keep my phone in my pocket like most people these days, and I have the Notes app that I pull out every time an idea comes to me. Usually, ideas come to me when I'm on the trail. So when I'm running, it'll stop me mid-run, and I'll have to type out an idea that I'd like to make. And I have a list of 100 of these ideas in my phone, and most of them never make it to reality. They never become objects. They're just like, oh, hey, there's a great idea, and I'm on with the rest of my life. But how I know an idea is something I want to pursue is when I write it down, and then I just can't get it out of my brain. Like, oh my God, black and orange classical Greek vessels with updated imagery was a really, really powerful idea for me. So if I sink my teeth into it and can't let it go, that's how I know I want to push it forward. And sometimes an idea will come to me, and I'll play with it for a week or 2 weeks, and then I'll decide, nah, this isn't the thing I want to be doing. But I'm constantly busy. Like, I'm never not making something. I never have a lull in projects. And sometimes I just get really excited and push it forward. And sometimes I decide that it's not worth my time and effort, or get distracted by some other shiny thing.
And as you're going through and making all this work that's so like personal and meaningful, how do you not let the judgments of other people affect the way that you view your work, or the way that you continue working through that process for what series you're working on or whatnot?
Being in art school is a weird thing because you have a lot of different voices telling you what to do or what not to do. And most of those voices are really helpful and want to see you do well. So knowing which voices to listen to is important. There are always going to be critics, and there will always be people who want you to not say what you're saying or do what you're doing because it makes them feel uncomfortable or they don't agree with you. And that's okay. I think that if everybody likes what you're doing, then you're not doing it right, because there are a lot of people out there with bad ideas or notions or intentions. I just think I think that know who you can trust and listen to the voices that you can trust, and the haters are gonna always be there, and you can completely disregard them, because while they're busy hating, you are busy making.
Are there times that you feel that you can't shut up those voices? And if you do, how do you kind of work through that? Like, do you have slumps where you don't feel like as strong to be able to ignore those voices that may be dragging you down? Or do you feel that you're pretty positive and you can kind of work through it easily?
Like I mentioned earlier, I'm really stubborn. So if there's something I want to do, I'm going to do it. Coming into art school as a craftsman, someone who's focusing on Venetian stemware, like Venetian stemware isn't a thing that happens at art school. But I'm stubborn, and I chose to to make work in that style that said something to me, that spoke to me, because I wanted to. I wanted to prove a point that goblets can be art, and and I maybe could listen more if I was really honest. I could take more criticism and accept more new ideas, but I also think it's really important to stay true to what makes you excited to wake up in the morning and get in the shop to make. When I teach, a lot of people will ask me what to make, and I say, whatever that thing is that you're really excited to make that thing, because that's what's going to keep your hands busy. That's what's going to level up your skills, is being excited to get in there and make a thing.
So do you do a lot of teaching, and can you maybe explain the difference in mindset for that you go into teaching versus if you're going to go into the shop and make your own work?
I do some teaching. The pandemic has kind of put the kibosh on that. So that goes, and I'm looking forward to teaching once things start opening up again. I've got classes scheduled at the Corning Museum of Glass, not this summer, but the following summer, as well as Penland. So I'm really looking forward to teaching some week-long and 2-week-long intensives. I think that's gonna be really, really fun.
The classes that you're going to teach, are they going to be like goblet focused, or like the stuff you're learning at art school, or a little bit of everything, or whatever the student has to bring to the table?
Uh, the classes I'm going to teach are beginner level classes, and it's going to be skill building. In fact, the one of the classes that I want to take, I based around the factory, and I'm really interested in teaching like simple things like bubble setups and nice gathering and mold blowing and repetition, and the things that you learn making a product 1,000 times.
I can really respect that.
Yeah.
That would be right up my alley.
Do you sell your work at this point, or is it all just like art school focused right now?
Having just been on Blown Away, I'm getting a lot of interest in my work right now, and it's super overwhelming, because I have no time for that. I am very much focused on being a student, and I don't want that to distract from my momentum. I am looking forward to a time when I'm selling my work more regularly, but I'm just not in a space where I can do that. I'm fortunate enough to be able to focus on being a student.
Do you want to tell us anything about your experience with Blown Away? Was it pretty positive? It sounds like you got a lot of positive outlook from it later, right?
Yeah, I had more to offer than I demonstrated on that show, and when I left earlier than I wanted to, I won't say when in case anyone hasn't seen it yet. I was really, I was crushed for a minute because I just had more that I wanted to say and more that I wanted to display. But that was wasn't the reality of my experience. Yeah, so I was disappointed by the outcome of that show, but I learned a lot of good things. I learned how to work under pressure, and I got some really great exposure. Great opportunities have been opening up as a result of having been on that show. Interest in my work has never been greater. More eyes are on me. I'm getting contacted by craft schools and museums and media outlets, and like good things are flowing from this experience, even if it was not the ideal outcome.
Was it really hard to be up and away from home and working in a funny space and having all those camera people all around and stuff?
Yeah, you have no idea. It's the most stressful thing I've ever done. Knowing that my entire community was going to see every single one of my moves, knowing that every word I spoke could be used as ammunition against me. I was so pleased when I saw the final cut of the show. I think that they were very, very kind to me in their edits, and they showed me in the best possible light. Overall, I'm very pleased with how I presented on the camera.
Were you like holding your breath for the whole year between when it was filmed and when it finally came out?
The whole year, losing sleep over it.
I think you're all so brave for doing that. I think it's so cool.
I know. It's just like such a scary thought to me.
The glass blowing really was the least difficult part of that show. Navigating a space where there are 10 other people blowing glass and there are two furnaces and a bunch of annealers and 10 camera people and a director, and there's the medic in the back and the sound guy who's just off stage, and that's a lot of people to navigate.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And then every time you're in the middle of something really important, they have to stop and stick the camera in your face and ask you questions. And
uh, yeah, yeah. But it was fun. It was really challenging. It was really, really hard. Working with an assistant that I had never worked with before, in a shop that I had never worked in before, a shop that is, by the way, almost more set than studio. It looks great. I just want a garage that works really well. That's what I really want. That would make my experience better.
Tegan said that the heat shields are kind of like cut off at your body so the camera person can see.
Yeah, oh yeah. And then the heat guard on the bench was made of this noxious smelling wood that would catch on fire, like really, really easily. So you would be rolling your pipe down the bench and your bench would erupt in flames and you'd be like, what am I supposed to do with this? Or the Marver was super rusty except for one big fat grease spot in the middle. So it was like grip, grip, slip. every time you were Marver, I wouldn't say it was great. No, that wasn't great.
Good looking back. Bad at the time.
It was like, well, what am I gonna do about that? There's not much I can do about that. I guess I'll just keep making.
Just challenging your skill set.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good to hear that so many positive things came out of that for you. It makes me really happy.
One of my biggest takeaways from being on that show is how great of a community Glass is. Like, it's not a perfect place, and I have some things to say about it. But the folks that I was working with on that show were very kind and generous and thoughtful. Nobody wanted to see anyone fail. There was a real spirit of camaraderie. And I think that every show needs some drama. And there was a certain character on the show that there was some drama on the screen around. But the reality is, backstage, everybody was friends and smiles. And the same way that they did some judicious editing to make me who I was, the same is happening for everyone. They're really crafting personas out of the 1,000 interviews that we give, and they're taking and choosing words and phrases to tell a story. They are crafting a narrative. So I was just really pleased with how great everyone was, and like really proud of how we all got along.
Cool. Do you feel comfortable sharing any of the gripes that you have with the glass community that perhaps could give other people a different perspective than what they have right now?
The world of glass is not an inclusive space. You, unless you're very lucky like me, don't fall into glass without a huge amount of support in your life. You have to have the privilege to encounter it in a place like art school, where a lot of the folks you encounter are there for a 4-year summer camp experience where they have support from their family and a network where they don't have to succeed. And I'm not saying that's everyone, and even the most privileged, I know some folks who are very, very hardworking. So I don't want to say that that's what it is completely. But what I am saying is that unless you have a lot of privilege, you don't get to blow glass. I fell into it, and it is a constant sacrifice to choose to spend my paychecks to get into the studio to practice this thing, and I have no plan B. And sometimes it's not appreciated what a struggle it can be for a person that doesn't come from that level of support. So that's one thing, is that a lot of folks just like take it for granted. The glass world is not inclusive. You look around and you don't see anybody that looks like me in a hot shop most of the time. When I walk into a shop, it is a sea of white male faces mostly, and that is a hard space to walk into, to know that you are the odd man out, so to speak. I've had experiences where I've walked into a shop and people have assumed I was some rabble coming in off the street, and they've tried to shoo me out, before I had a chance to introduce myself and say, hey, I'm a glass blower. How's it going? I've gone into a store to buy color and been told that I was in the wrong place. Like it's not a space people expect to encounter a Black person. And that's just the reality of it. And that's not everyone, but it's often enough. I would say that those are some real challenges I have with this community. Another challenge I have is that I don't think that there is an acknowledgement about what it takes to succeed in the world of glass. There's no acknowledgement about, like, if you want to get really good, you need to go and work with somebody who's really good, which means, like, most of the time, if you're just starting out, you need to be available to be the free guy. And unless you have a lot of privilege, you don't get to just go and be the free guy. Like, you have to have a huge support network to go and earn the skill set that will get you the paying job. There is a privilege that comes with having the space to sort of earn that place. So I'd like to see a little bit more acknowledgement about what it takes to actually get anywhere in the glass game.
Thanks for sharing those stories and experiences. I think that it will give people a little bit of your perspective. Okay, so I have two questions, one lighter and one not so. First, do you still sing? And second, what would your definition of success be?
I sing all the time for fun, and I wouldn't make anybody pay to come see me. What is my definition of success? Success is going to look like a long and varied career, one where I make art and teach and show and speak, one where I have enough space in my backyard to plant some vegetables and enough space in my life where I can go on vacation with my wife. I think that success looks like the freedom to chase my passions. Success is not about the material things. I think that my bank account could read, next to nothing for the rest of my life, and I could still have a successful life. It's more about rich experiences and living a life that I'm passionate about.
Beautiful answer.
Mm-hmm. Do you deal at all with imposter syndrome?
Some days I think I'm the shit, and then some days I think that I don't deserve to be where I'm at. Um, yeah, some days I'm really proud of myself, and some days I'm really embarrassed by myself. And the days that I'm feeling embarrassed are really motivating for me. They get me back in the studio and trying hard. If I succeeded all the time, I don't think I would be trying as hard. Yeah, I do feel like an imposter sometimes, but I feel like I have worked really hard and have a whole career's worth of working hard ahead of me, and that it's okay to be embarrassed by the things I made yesterday, because I know that the things I'm making tomorrow are going to be better.
Cool answer.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to share with the people who are listening?
Yes, I'm not one of those pie in the sky kind of guys who believes that you can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it and work hard enough. I don't think that's the reality that any of us were born into, and that there are such things as limitations. What I really would like to leave with everybody that listens to this is that despite the fact that not everything you want in this life can you achieve, you can achieve a lot by putting your nose to the grindstone and working really hard. And I bet that if you did that, you would be shocked at how far you can get. I'm a really firm believer in concentrated effort over a span of time. If you apply concentrated effort over a span of time at anything, you will get really good at it. And that if you give up too soon, you won't ever see where you can go.
Well, thanks so much for all your time and thought and for sharing all those stories, and pretty vulnerable, and it really means a lot to us.
Thanks for your good questions. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Connected in Glass. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information on the artists we interview and for updates on the podcast.